Welcome to the continuing session on leadership. In this session, we will try to know about the transformational and the transactional models of leadership, authentic leadership, ethical leadership, recent concepts of leadership like team leadership, and more so we will try to focus on the different cultures and what leadership means in those cultures. So, to start off with, we will try to discuss the difference between transformational leadership and transactional leadership. So, both the theories, transformational leadership and transactional leadership, emphasize an exchange process between the leader and the follower. But when you are talking of transactional leadership, it is it is a style of the leaders who are guiding, who wants to guide or motivate their followers in the direction of established goals by clarifying roles and task requirements. So, leaders want to their followers to identify in the direction of what must be done to accomplish their desired results, and uses the path goal concept as the framework. So, and the leaders rely on contingent rewards, in the sense like contract exchange for rewards in terms for effort taken, then promises reward for good conduct and good performance, recognizes accomplishments. So, and management is done by exception, in the sense passive, it is intervene only when it is required and when the standards are not met, and active in the sense it searches for deviation of rules and standards, and when takes corrective action when such deviations are there. So, and laissez-faire in the sense it shows that when contingent rewards are used, then followers show increased in performance and satisfaction. So, in management by exception, the followers are left on their own and the leader does not intervene until and unless the objectives are not met. So, this is how like the transactional leadership tells about how the followers are led in the direction of the set goals by clarifying the task at hand and task requirements, and what is the role of the followers towards the task requirement. When you are talking of transformational leaderships, it is more of working towards a transcendental goal instead of short term self interest, and for achievement of self actualization of the employees instead of sense of security. So, transactional leaders like will adjust goals and directions and mission for practical reasons, but transformation leaders will make major changes in the firm's mission, way of doing things, and human resource management, in the sense transformational leaders are visionaries. They want to visualize things, want to give shape to things and find out new ways of doing things, so that the whole organization and the employees develop and they transcend their present position to a position which is of higher level. So, that is where this transformational leadership is important. So, when you are talking of transformational leader, the influence is that of idealized influence, provides a vision and sense of mission, instills pride and gains respect and trust. It is a style of inspiration, like it talks of communicating high expectations, uses symbols and efforts express important purpose in simple ways. Intellectual stimulation promotes intelligence, rationality, and helps the people to reach their target in careful problem solving. And individualized attention gives personal attention, treats each employee individually, coaches and advises. So, it is more of like personal touch, along with how to meet the organizational objectives, and even to define a new objective, define a new way of looking at things, is what is the characteristics of transformational leaders. To say things differently, to say it in a whole new perspective, and how to inspire people, to how to lead by example, so that people gets inspired by noticing them, by following them, and they also want to be like that. So this is the full range of the leadership model when we are talking of transactional and transformational leadership. So it starts from like we can divide it into two continua of passive, active, and effective and ineffective. And we see the transactional leadership, it starts from laissez-faire, moving up by management by exception to contingent reward. And transformational leadership is like individualized consideration, intellectual stimulation, then inspirational motivation, and then idealized influence, like when you influence the values of the people and help them to look at things in a new perspective and change further, like moving to a very higher up level, then these type of leaders are called transformational leaders. Attribution theory of leadership. Here we try to define leaders, define behaviors that is defined by more of what is being perceived rather than the actual causes of events, as to why something is happening. So it tries to construct a causal explanation for that guides leadership behavior, like what is the cause behind the behavior, and how leadership gets guided by it. So it tries to attribute some qualities to the leader as well as the follower, and how these qualities affect their mutual behavior is what attribution theory of leadership is focusing into. So first we'll look into the leader's attribution. So one of the primary attributional tasks of leaders is to form some attributes about the followers. So the primary attributional task of leader is done by, like, they try to categorize the causes of followers' behavior into one of the three main dimensions, like due to the person, something, if something is happening, then whether do we attribute the cause to the person, like maybe the follower is of inadequate ability, do we attribute the cause to the of a follower's behavior to the entity, means the task at hand, or do we attribute the cause to the context, which is that is circumstances surrounding the event. From these type of attributions that are made, so the three types of informations are sought, like whether the behavior is very specific to the task, like it's distinctive to the task, then how frequently the behavior occurs, that is the consistency, and whether others to behave in the same way, that is the consensus. So three types of information the leader wants to seek from the behavior of the followers. The qualities that are attributed to the leaders, like leaders are intelligent, outgoing, have strong verbal skills, are aggressive, understanding, and industrious. Effective leaders are perceived as consistent and unwavering in their decisions. Effective leaders protect the appearance of being a leader. Then leaders' perception of responsibility, judgment of responsibility moderates the leader's response to attribution. In the sense, like if some of the behavior is studied and it is seen to be caused by the follower, and the more the follower is judged to be responsible, the more it is likely the leader will take certain action towards the follower. So, how it is perceived, like who is responsible for a particular act, will determine leaders' response to that particular attribution. If we are to see, if we are to like evaluate attribution leadership model, it is better than the trait and other personal behavioral theories in explaining the leadership behavior, because it tries to explain why behavior happens. So, and it offers some, it throws some light on the explanation of leaders' response to followers, and we can predict like how it's going to happen. So, but it emphasizes two linkages, like leaders attempt to make attributions about poor performance. Leaders' response is determined by attributions made by him or her, and but the research support is limited to this type of theories. And again, it's very difficult sometimes to understand leaders' behavior. Like if we are talking of attribution, then like whether leaders' behavior is developed by the subordinates' performance, like whether its leaders might be expected to develop positive attitudes or negative attitudes towards the followers based on the based on their performance. If the followers are performing well, maybe the leaders start liking them and share more time with them or share better information with them, because they feel like maybe this is the person who can progress further. So, this this positive feeling may again generate future expectations. Like if I start feeling like the follower is someone, this particular follower is able to move forward and have potential in certain tasks, then maybe I start expecting from that follower of much higher degree. So, it's research is like what leads to, like performance leads to better expectation, or expectations leading into performance. These type of causal effect relationship is still like research is limited. So, one research study on first line supervisors concluded that leader consideration behavior caused subordinate satisfaction, and follower performance caused changes in the leader's emphasis on both consideration and structure. So, it's maybe both ways. The leader's attitude is affecting the subordinate's performance, which in turn affects again the leader's style. So, challenges to attribution theory is that is particular to that idea, like leadership is merely the attribution that people make about other people and the followers, and it's not giving emphasis on your traits or the behaviors or the competencies of the leader. Next, we have another style of leadership. All these are very upcoming styles of leadership, like authentic leaders and ethical leaders. Like authentic leaders are those who know like who they are, what they believe in, and what are their values, and act on those values very openly and candidly. As a result, because they appear to be true to themselves and a true representative of their inner self, followers see them very ethical. So, ethical leaders, they use ethical means to get the followers to achieve their goals, and the goals themselves are themselves ethical in nature. So, ethical leadership, what they do is work to positively change the attitudes and behaviors of employees, engage in socially constructive behaviors, and do not abuse power or misuse power to use improper means to attain the goals. So, this is like the person who is authentic leader and has probability also to be of ethical leaders, in the sense because they are true to themselves, because they do not maintain a outer image and an inner self. So, and they know their values well, they know the organizational values well, and they try to adjust to those situations. So, in that case, followers perceive them to be ethical, and like whatever does the leader does is based on like some virtues, and values are followed, and they can trust the leader in the fact like they are not abusing their power or to use inappropriate means to reach a particular goal. Out of all these things, what appears is one of the basic foundation for leadership behavior is the trust, and so the leader follower relationship, this whole relationship is based on the relationship of trust. So, which is a positive expectation that another person will not, through words, actions, or decisions, act opportunistically. Trust is history dependent process like familiarity. So, how do you know, like how can you trust, like I know that I person, like previous incidents have proved like I can trust this person sort of. So, it's history dependent process based on relevant but simple limited samples of experience. So, like risk taking, some behavior is there. So, I want to take some risk also and find out like whether this person is trustworthy or not. So, this is a feeling, understanding, verifying like whether that the person is other person is genuine and will not in any way try to harm me. So, it depends on few characteristics like integrity, which is honesty and truthfulness; competence, like in individuals' technical and interpersonal knowledge and skills; consistency, in the sense an individual's reliability, predictability, and good judgment in handling situations. Loyalty is the willingness to protect and save face for another person, and openness, reliance on the person to give you the full truth. So, these are few characteristics which defines whether a person is truthful, is trustworthy or not. And you see integrity to be the primary characteristics of when we define whether a person is trustworthy or not. Integrity, competence, consistency, loyalty and openness are the 5 characteristics which defines like the level of trust and trustworthiness of a person. So, again trust can be of like 3 types. One is the deterrence based trust, like trust which is based on fear of reprisal if the trust is violated. So, I have to trust you, otherwise like or you have to trust me, both ways, otherwise you get punished for it. Or if you do not trust me, maybe there is some like incentive you receive for it. Knowledge based trust, so this comes identification based trust, which is the trust developed because of we can identify the two persons who trust each other can identify with each other and identify with each other's intentions and appreciate the other's wants and desires. So, that is identification based trust. And those trust, like whether when it is coming to knowledge based trust and identification based trust, they develops a more better bonding between the leaders and the followers, and they can share their information, share their true self to each other without fear of being reprimanded for it. Then amongst the contemporary leadership roles which are there, so in it one of the primary roles are that of providing team leadership. So, in team leadership what has to be done? So, like here the leader acts as a liaison with external environment, serve as troubleshooters, manage conflict and coaching to improve team member performance. And one of the team leadership role is that of mentoring. So, it is a senior employee who sponsors and supports the less experienced employee. Mentoring activities which include like presenting ideas clearly, empathizing, listening well, sharing experiences, acting as a role model and sharing contacts and providing political guidance. So, how to move through the organization, what are the correct ways of behaving in the organization, how to perform and act with less of error. So, how to adjust within the organizational situations, this is what the mentor can guide the new employee about or the less experienced employee on these factors. Another contemporary leadership role is that of self leadership. So, self leadership is a set of processes in which through which the individuals control their own behavior. So, for creating self leaders, it is very important to view oneself in a like see to think of oneself as a self leader, that is modeling self leadership. So, encouraging employees to create self set goals, encouraging the use of self rewards, in the sense if I reach my goal, maybe I will take one day off or I will appreciate myself, these sort of things. And creating positive thought patterns, like how to reach a particular goal, what are the ways, how to set the objectives, map it down to the goals, and what are the steps taken to reach that goal. This whole process, like creating positive thought patterns, how to find linkage between the apparently separate entities, like points which appears not to be linked with each other. How do we form linkages and how do we make meanings out of things? So, these are some positive thought patterns which which a person should nurture. Then create a climate of self leadership. So, an organization to promote self leaders, the climate has to be ready for it. The encouraging factors should be present in the climate, so that the person, the followers, want to be self leaders. And encouraging self criticism, that is also important, like self criticism in the sense evaluating one's own work and to find out how it can be improved. These are some of the categories of self or qualities rather of self leadership, and if practiced may transform one individual to a self leader. So, online leadership is when you are like leadership in a virtual team. When it happens, it's leadership at a distance, and it is like building trust through that is very important. So when there is a lack of face-to-face contact in electronic communication, it removes the non-verbal cues that support verbal interactions. So there is no supporting context around to assist the receiver to take the cues of how to interpret the setting and the effect of non-verbal behavior, and to holistically study the situation to understand what that actual behavior pattern is. So this the structure and tone of electronic messages can strongly affect the response of the receivers. So the media itself has its own qualities which attributes get it's a different phenomena, and the message gets interpreted in that way. Like a person's verbal and written communications may not follow the same style. And writing skills generally becomes an extension of interpersonal skills. So in this condition, like online leadership is really a challenge, like because you have to be a very good analyzer of like the contents of the written communication, and maybe and written communication has to be very strong, in the sense through it you are reaching the person on the who is there as the receiver, though maybe you are not meeting them directly and there is no face-to-face interaction and non-verbal cues are not present. So your writings, whatever you write, that becomes a media of you interacting with your followers, and that's how you get to know your followers, so the followers get to know you. So that part, this written communication, becomes very important. Now we will look more into the multicultural context of leadership, because this is where like people are functioning now when they're working in MNCs and when they get transferred to different countries. So what they have to work in is the context of multicultural, and they have to work with people coming from different parts of the world with their own value system, their own likings and everything, and how to adjust in those situations, how to like motivate people coming from different cultures, how to inspire people, and how to explain to them what's required and how to get the job done. These are some of the challenges. So some of the basic competencies of multicultural leaders are like, first is preferred awareness, in the sense willingness to be aware of others' feelings. If we don't want to be aware of others' feelings, then it means we are not opening the gate for communication through which like we can communicate with the other person. So preferred awareness, in the sense like we want to be aware, willingness to be aware of others' feelings. Actual awareness is actual understanding of oneself and others. So submissiveness to rules and authority, like we have to abide by the rules and regulations of that particular country, or where we are doing our business, and how they expect the organizations to behave, or the individuals within the organization to behave, whether there is a set expectation from that country and culture. So these things we have to understand, like reliance on others for problem solving, then favoring of group decision making, because by this process you get to know your people better, and concern for human relations and cooperative peer relations. These are some of the things which effective multicultural people organization they demonstrate. So, other factors which are important are who are the subordinates and who are the peers and who are the superiors, what is the task at hand and what are the task environment. So, there is no particular way or universal way to lead, but there are differences in style amongst the people and preferences which can make job less frustrating, because sometimes you like you want to you work under a person, be more happy with someone who understands you and your need and try to adjust tasks to that, and from whom you can learn about the attitudes of behaving with others, like how to assimilate this person within yourself. These are some of the qualities that you would love to learn from your leader, and that makes the job less frustrating and more enjoying. If you start liking your leader and you want to be like that leader and are comfortable working with leader. So, Hofstede's cultural dimensions tell like that if a person, if an employees rank high on power distance, they may prefer an autocratic style of leadership. So, employees who are low on power distance, they may prefer a more participative style of leadership. So, what happens is that like its leadership qualities, leadership theories developed in one context may not work in the other context. So, because the leadership style which is more acceptable in one context is connected with the country's own history, norms, behavior and the systems which are there in place. So, it is not possible just to superimpose one leadership style on the other culture, because the leadership is very culture specific, because the norms develop, the belief system develops from the culture of the employees, develop from the culture which the employee is in. So, here we will try to focus some of the leadership styles which are prevalent in different countries and try to find out how these things are different. Like attitudes of European managers towards leadership practices. The higher level managers tend to express more democratic values than lower level managers in some countries. In other countries, the opposite was true. The company size like tends to influence the degree of participative and autocratic attitudes. So, young managers were more likely to have democratic values when it came to capacity for leadership and initiative and sharing information and objectives. So, if you see, most European managers tend to reflect participative values and democratic attitudes, but again it is not true in every country. Organizational level, company size and age seem to influence attitudes towards leadership. So, this is what is general is about true about European managers. Japanese leadership style is more of paternalistic in approach. So, it promotes high safety or security need, which is present among home country based employees as well as MNC expatriates. So, Japanese leaders believe more in the capacity of the subordinates for leadership, and they want to promote that. They do take initiative for promoting that, and that is what it differentiates from managers from other countries. So, difference between the Japanese and US style of leadership is except for internal control, like large US firms tend to be more democratic than small ones, and the profile is quite different in Japan. So, younger US managers appear to express more democratic attitudes than older counterparts. Like Japanese people, they believe in theory Z, and for managing people, and use assumptions and approaches provide like it's a comparison, like when you're talking about theory Z, which is theory Z, and which combines actually the Japanese way of looking at things and the American way of looking at things, and based on like 7 key characteristics which are there. So another like if difference between Japanese and US leadership is how senior level managers process information and learn. So variety amplification is Japanese executives are taught to tend to use variety amplification. So the creation of uncertainties in the analysis of many alternatives regarding future action. US managers are told of variety reduction. So to use the variety reduction, the limitation of uncertainty and focusing on action in limited number of alternatives. If we are looking towards China and the leadership style in China, so the respondents in one study assign importance to individualism, which was measured by the importance of self-sufficiency and personal accomplishments, and like collectivism, which was measured by the willingness to subordinate personal goals to those of the work group with an emphasis on sharing and group harmony, and Confucianism, measured by the importance of societal harmony, virtuous interpersonal behavior, and personal interpersonal harmony. So these were the 3 areas in which the respondents assigned their importance. So what we found is that the new generation group scored significantly higher on individualism than did the current or the old generation groups. So they again scored lower than the others on Confucianism and collectivism. So this is maybe reflection of the new era, time in which there are more openness to experience, and that is the social reform era. So because they have greater influence, so they greater exposure towards Western societal influence, so they prefer leadership style because they are more exposed to Western society and they maybe want to be like those people. They prefer leadership style which is similar to that of Western managers. Leadership in the Middle East. So, well, like Western management practices are evident in the Arabian Gulf region due to close business between the West and this oil-rich area, as well as the increase in educational attainment often in Western universities of Middle Eastern managers. So we import cultures from outside. So like the organizational culture, level of technology, level of education, these are some good predictors of the decision making styles in the United Arab Emirates. So in the young Arabs, there is a tendency towards participative style of leadership style, middle managers, as well as among the highly educated managers of all ages. So participative leadership style which is tried to be followed in the Middle East. So when you are going to differentiate the Middle Eastern and Western management, you find like according to different dimensions, what you find is that in Middle Eastern management, leadership is highly authoritarian tone, rigid instruction. When you are talking of organizational structure, it is highly bureaucratic, over centralized with power and authority at the top, vague relationships, ambiguous, unpredictable organizational environment. Western management is less bureaucratic, more delegation of authority, relatively decentralized structure. Performance evaluation and control, informal control mechanism, routine checks in performance, lack of vigorous performance evaluation system. So, it is fairly advanced control system focusing on cost reduction and organizational effectiveness. Personal policies are like in Middle Eastern countries, it is heavy reliance on personal contacts and getting individuals from the right social origin to fill the major positions. So, while in Western it is sound personal management policies, candidates qualification are the major important. So, communication, it depends on the social position of the social position, power and family influence are ever present factors. So, chain of commands are to be followed rigidly, people relate to each other tightly and specifically. So, friendship is intense and binding. So, in Western countries it stresses generally on equality and minimization of difference. Peoples are related to each other in loose and generally. So, what has happened is friendships are not that much intense and binding. When it comes to decision making, ad hoc planning, decisions are made as at the highest level of management, unwillingness to take high risk inherent in the decision making. So, in the Western it is sophisticated planning techniques, modern tools of decision making are applied and elaborate management information systems. So, it is more like systematic when it is come to the decision making process when you are talking about the Western countries as compared to the the Middle Eastern countries. So, this is of a ranking of the most important leadership attributes by the region and country cluster. What we find like these are the different country clusters and leadership attributes are like it is in Anglo culture is performance oriented, in Nordic culture it is integrity, it is Germanic it is integrity, and then in France it is participative, leadership style is inspirational and performance oriented, not autocratic, like in as per the leader is concerned, whether the visionary or performance oriented or administratively skilled. So, what we can see we can classify at least some of the leadership qualities based on these country clusters and try to find the differences in them. And this continues for the different cultures that we find. In developing countries, like managerial attitudes in India are similar to Anglo-Americans towards the capacity for leadership and initiative, participating and internal control, but different in sharing information and objectives. So, leadership styles in Peru meant to be close to those in the United States than previously assumed. Developing countries may be moving towards a more participative leadership style. Why this is happening? Because maybe the developed countries are getting attracted towards the developing countries. As far as businesses are concerned, they want to move to those countries to do their businesses, they want to employ people from there. So, these countries have to adapt to the leadership style and to learn the leadership style of the the developed countries, so that this smooth flow of business continues. So, in those cases mostly and because there is no longer psychological barriers existing, and it's an open communication world. The West is so close to the heart of people, or they in the sense are getting exposures to Western way of leadership. So, the people may get attracted towards it and learn the good parts of it and be maybe participative leadership is what that is getting, people are getting attracted towards. So, one of the success of full global leadership is keys to success of global leadership is knowing what style and behavior works best in a given culture and adapt to it properly. So, in affective cultures, people may exhibit their emotions. In neutral cultures, leaders do not tend to show their emotions. So, these are certain things like global leaders have to learn to know which is effective where. So, there are certain tips of like when managing or managed in affective cultures, avoid a detached, ambiguous and cool demeanor, because this will be interpreted as negative behavior. In neutral cultures, avoid warm, excessive or enthusiastic behaviors, because these will be interpreted as lack of personal control over one's feelings and be viewed inconsistent with one's high status. In affective cultures, find out whose work and enthusiasm are being directed into which projects, so that you are able to appreciate the vigor and commitment they have for these efforts. Then in neutral cultures, extensively prepare the things that you have to do and then stick tenaciously to the issue. Then in affective culture, let people become emotional without personally becoming intimidated or coerced by their behavior. Neutral cultures look for cues whether people are pleased or angry and then amplify their importance. So, this is how you try to differentiate your leadership style while you are working in an affective culture or a neutral culture. Then again, while this is again certain ways that we have to remember, like while doing business with individuals in like affective cultures for those who are from neutral cultures. Like do not be put off slide when others create scenes and get histrionic. Take time outs for sober reflection and hard assessments. Neutral cultures, for those from affective cultures, ask for timeouts from meetings and negotiations where you can patch each other up and rest between games of poker with the impassive ones. In affective cultures, when others are expressing goodwill, respond warmly. In neutral cultures, put down as much as you can on paper before you begin the negotiation. In affective cultures, we have to understand like other person's enthusiasm and readiness to agree doesn't mean that the person has made up his or her mind. Again, like side by side in the neutral culture, other person's lack of emotional tone doesn't mean like the person is not disinterested or bored, only that the person does not like to show his or her hand. So, in affective cultures, the negotiation that you do is entirely focused on how you are as a person and not so much on the object of negotiation. And in neutral cultures, it is focused entirely on the object of negotiation and not on you as a person. So, people, while after knowing these things, people can adjust to the situations while moving from one culture to the another culture and trying to be effectively functioning in that the other culture. In affective cultures, like people really reveal their thoughts and feelings both verbally and non-verbally. In neutral cultures, people often do not reveal what they are talking about or feeling, thinking or feeling. In affective cultures, emotions flow easily, vehemently and without inhibition. In neutral cultures, emotions are often dammed up and occasionally they may explode. In affective cultures, heated, vital and animated expressions are encouraged. In neutral culture, cool and self-possessed conduct is admired. In affective cultures, touching, gesturing and strong facial expressions are common. In neutral cultures, physical contact, gesturing and strong facial expressions are not used. In affective cultures, statements are made dramatically. In neutral cultures, statements are often read out in monotonous voice. So, here we find like the affects how to adjust in different cultural situation. This is very useful for expatriates and to get adjusted in a particular cultural situation so that they can perform well. Now, when we are talking of substitutes of leadership, so what you are trying to find out is leadership substitutes are task, organizational or subordinate characteristics that render relationship and a task oriented leaders as not only impossible, but also unnecessary. So, maybe leaders are not required in that type of situation. Leadership neutralizer, something that makes it impossible for leadership to make a difference. So, these are certain things like how much difference a leader can make or whether leadership is at all required or not. When these type of questions are coming, we are looking into substitutes for leadership. So, though it is claimed to be prominent in many organizations, but leadership approaches fail to include them in efforts to explain behavior. Like the subordinate's ability, need for independence and professional orientation can neutralize a leader's task oriented influence, and a cohesive work group and intrinsically satisfying task can negate a leader's relationship oriented influence. So, how to, like, in what situations the influence of leaders get minimized and or they are replaceable is what we are looking for when you are talking of substitutes for leadership. Like substitute or neutralizer, if you are talking of subordinates characteristics, is experience and ability and training of the employees, they can substitute instrumental leadership. Professional orientation can substitute supportive leadership and also like instrumental leadership. Like indifference towards reward in a particular employee can neutralize the effects of certain supportive leaders and also instrumental leaders, because if I am not attracted towards like the reward system, I am intrinsically motivated, then I am less concerned about like how my leader is perceiving me, whether that person is giving me support or not, whether that person is giving me positive strokes or not, because these things like do not matter to me much. I am happy with the things that I am doing. So, whether the leader praises me or not, whether the leader tells me to do certain task or not, I will be doing my own task, which is given to me by the organization, because the task itself is very motivating for me. Then task characteristics is structured routine task, it substitutes like the instrumental leadership. Feedback provided by task is also substituting the instrumental leadership, and intrinsically satisfying task, it substitutes the supportive leadership. Organizational characteristics like cohesive work group, it substitutes the relational, the supportive leadership and the instrumental leadership. Low position power is like it again neutralizes the both styles of leadership. Like if there is a great formalization, then it acts as a substitute for instrumental leadership. Inflexibility in rules, like rules policies, it will neutralize the instrumental leadership, which is task oriented. Dispersed subordinates work sites, it's like neutralizer for both the tasks, because in those cases, like maybe we are not in direct contact with the leaders for supportive feedback and the task to be explained. So in those cases, these employees in the different work sites are functioning like the self leaders. So all these two things get neutralized by when you are talking of dispersed subordinate work sites. Next we move to certain questions after we have gone through the whole discussion of what is leadership, what are the different styles of leadership, what are the different new upcoming things in leadership. So just for recapitulation, here we have defined what is leadership. It's a way of influencing the thought process and behaviors of others and motivating them, inspiring them to do certain things which towards leading an organizational objectives. We have tried to see whether leadership is a trait and whether it is a behavior or it depends on situations or contingencies. And there we have tried to look into various leadership things like charismatic leaderships, which is more focused on like the traits of the person, the competencies of the leaders to attract followers and inspire followers to do certain things, and what are the behaviors expected in a particular leader. We have focused also into the competencies of leaders required for different types of situations, and which is situations. Competencies are like as per the need of the situation and also for the functions of the organizations. What are the knowledge, skill, ability which helps the person to come up to what are the qualities in the sense knowledge, skill, ability, qualities which are required to be a leader in a particular situation for a particular task. We are focused into the situation specific leadership, like as per the need of the situation, what is the leadership style. We have taken into consideration also the role of followers in defining leaders. We have taken into consideration the attributes which the leader and followers make to each other and how they affect their functioning. We also have focused into the ethical issues of leadership when we are talking of authentic leadership and ethical leadership. Also we have discussed about transformational and transactional leadership and what is the role of culture and culture specific leadership behavior, like how to know what is the proper leadership style when you are functioning in US, China, Japan, India. So we have tried to draw a comparative analysis also, so that when people are working outside their own specific domain, they won't have to adjust to those situations and learn those leadership styles so that they can function properly. So we have discussed authentic leadership also, and maybe so all these styles, inspirational leadership, like there are more of leadership styles, and upcoming new leadership styles are coming up, which maybe you have to search for yourself, find out like what is a collaborative leadership style, what is a new leadership styles like alpha leadership if it is coming up. Like when you're talking of servant leaders, who are they? So these are different ideas of leadership style which are emerging based on the need of the situation, based on the type of organization that you are functioning, and which of the style is effective for different situations. So this was the basic discussions, but the leadership styles do not end over here, or it's not like it's very rigidly compartmentalized. You can mix and match between these styles to find out like which is the leadership style, and how do you know what are the competencies of that leader, what are the expectations from that leader, how he functions, and what are the situations which make that leadership style more appropriate. So with this we'll move to the questions like what is leadership, compare leadership versus management, discuss the different functions of leadership, what are the different approaches to the study of leadership, discuss the different leadership styles and a behavioral approach, which style according to you is more effective and why. Discuss the different leadership styles and a situational approach, which style according to you is more effective and why. Write short notes on charismatic leadership, attributional theory of leadership, authentic leaders and effective behavior, trust, the foundation of leadership, and substitutes for leadership. What are the contemporary leadership roles? Discuss the significant aspects of online leadership. What is multicultural leadership and why knowledge of it is important for managers? Discuss with suitable examples the significant aspects of leadership approaches in developing countries. So, we will end our session over here with the expectation like this is a warm up for you to get interested, inspired to knowing more of the relevant leadership styles, emerging styles, and to see how they are useful and how they can be used properly for inspiring people. So, maybe we repeat again, the job of leader is today maybe not to lead. No, it is one of the jobs, we know it, but it is not only to lead, but to develop leaders, to make leaders out of the followers, to inspire people. It's not motivate people, but to inspire people by their own examples, by their own functioning, by their own virtues, by their own, they themselves being role models. So it's an immense responsibility on the leaders. So cultures may have their influence, but the leadership style which is accepted and which functions in one culture accordingly, like how a leader of that particular culture, what he or she does to inspire and how he inspires the followers to be next day leaders. This is maybe one of the primary functions of leaders, and importance of that is the importance of leadership. And if that is done, maybe the organizations will excel in its performance. Thank you.